All right. Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure today to introduce David Furlong, who is the director of the Spirit Release Forum and has a great deal of experience in the field of earth energies and healing. Um, uh, Although my specialist area is the energy grids around London, and I've read the books of Chris Street and John Michel. David Furlong has his own uh, unique ideas about London sacred geometry. So welcome David Furlong, and please tell us a bit about your background and history.
Yes. Hello, madam. Well, thanks for inviting me onto this presentation. As you've indicated, I've been involved with these areas for many, many years. In fact, I was brought up in a family that believed in spiritual healing. So, if you like, I grew up with an acknowledgement of some of the dimensions which we could access, and my healing work. Which is I'm now in my mid 70s, so and I can go back into the when I was around about age 20, starting to work with clients from a healing perspective. One of the things I discovered was, of course, sometimes the energies of places would have an adverse effect on what was going on for these clients. So that led me into beginning to research the significance of the energies of place. And at a certain point in my journey, I came across John Michel's famous book, View Over Atlantis, which was back in the mid 60s. Right. And that set me off on a quest, along with a few other colleagues, in beginning to look at the patterns of energy which exist in the country. Obviously picking up ideas of alignments, ideas of sacred sites, and the ways in which these patterns seem to be established, not just arbitrarily, but there seemed to be a coherent consciousness which sat behind them. And in all of this, I mean, we normally talk about alignments and ley lines as being straight trackways. The famous book, The Old Straight Track, really highlighted all of that idea. But I also made some discoveries that, in fact, there were circular patterns in the landscape, and that got written up in one of my books called The Keys to the Temple. So if you're interested in having a look at that, it's no longer in print, but it is available through Amazon, secondhand copies and so forth. So in that book, what it highlighted was a very sophisticated culture which would have existed in the UK in Neolithic times, the late Neolithic, so we're going back about 5,000 years, which part of their work involved establishing clearly defined sacred sites like the first stages of Stonehenge and Avebury and Silbury Hill and going up into the Orkneys and so forth. So there's a very deep understanding which we can track back all of that time.
So can I just step in there, David? Can I just ask, from your perspective, why do we get this picture told us in our standard history books that 5,000 years ago that our ancestors were fairly primitive, like Iron Age hunter-gatherers? Because it doesn't.
Well, certainly, if I go back to my early history, that was absolutely the case. You know, a woad-painted savage that roamed the landscape and so forth. But of course, what's happened, certainly coming on to more recent times, is a recognition of a level of sophistication which was hitherto not truly understood or appreciated. But all the researches which are going on now with current archaeology are beginning to recognize a much higher level of understanding and intelligence.
Yes.
Now, it still begs the question, how did they achieve this? And if we go back to thinking of the seminal book, John Michel's View of Atlantis, where he talked about the Michael alignment, which picked up a whole series of sites from St Michael's Mount in Cornwall right through to Bury St Edmunds, passing through Avebury and across the top of Glastonbury Tor and so forth. So it was very inspirational, that perspective. But if one thinks about that, is this just a natural energy line which people dowsed and then picked up? Or was it a line that was deliberately created? And my sense is that quite a lot of these patterns in the country were deliberately created. So I don't just see them as natural earth energy flows. That's not to say there's not natural earth energies, but there are deliberate patterns which have been
Isn't the Michael line, isn't that the Mayday sunrise line across the...
Yes, well, that's what they talk about, the Mayday sunrise. But if you think, if I was going to establish an alignment and I had to wait to every Mayday or, the other side of the, the year, the 1st of August, to pick up the alignment, this is going to be incredibly difficult. And what I've actually shown is it was much easier to establish alignments through star rising or star setting patterns.
Okay.
And one of the significant stars in the sky is the constellation of Orion. And it just so happens around about 2800 BC, Orion's belt would have set exactly on the Michael alignment. So very easy. You stand on a hilltop on a clear night, you can see exactly where the stars are setting, and therefore you can begin to pinpoint these alignments and plot them across the landscape. And I think it was done using light. I think it was done using posts and so forth. And it's amazing how accurate you can be in establishing these alignments, as long as you've got a clear line of sight. So, if they cleared the hilltops and were able to get good vision, it would be very easy to set up very accurate alignments across the landscape.
Okay.
So I think...
So, sorry, one thing that has totally intrigued me, because when we look at the construction of Stonehenge, the two concentric circles there, I understand that they reflect the relative proportions of the Earth for the inner circle and the Earth diameter plus the moon diameter for the outer circle. How, from your perspective, how were those people able to accurately detect that? They seem to have encoded accurate dimensions of the Earth and Moon and accurate proportions. How on earth did they do that?
Well, I mean, there's two ways that it could be done. One is through direct inspiration or intuition, and the secondly is through observation. And as long as the observations have gone on over a period of time, there's ways of beginning to set out and establish certain patterns. The sense of the precession of the equinoxes. Over time, they would have been able to spot that the stars moved. So it's if we're thinking of things in a short time, then that becomes difficult to spot. But over a longer period of time, I think they could well have done that. Now, what I would also add is, from my perspective, there is an incredible spiritual power that's been woven into different sites. And you can say that the spiritual power maybe is natural. A place like Glastonbury Tor, you could say, is the Tor itself would have had a whole level of consciousness and energy connected to it. But a place like Avebury, for example, I think the power was generated through the arrangement of the stones, the way in which the pattern was created, and some other X dimension which our Neolithic ancestors, or maybe we could see them as astronomer priests, were able to bring into those places.
So can I ask you, now you've just mentioned Avebury. I just saw something on I think it was the Enigma channel the other day, and it was talking about Avebury as a healing centre. Now I've visited Avebury many times because it's just a fascinating, attractive place to go. But what they mentioned the point of view of the presenter there was that the healing energies at Avebury particularly flow down the ditch. It's a massive ditch around the stones there. Now, every time I've been, I've never actually walked down through the ditch. I've always walked around the outside. Now, from your experience as a healer, is that where the main energy flows, the main energies flow?
Well, the answer to that is both yes and no. It's not the main energy. There are other energies in Avebury. And there's the energy of the consciousness of the stones themselves. There's the way in which the microline flows through the site. There's part of this work that I did on in my book, The Keys to the Temple, talks about this vast circular pattern, the circumference of which goes through Avebury. So we're talking about a circle of 12 miles diameter, which, curiously enough, in the work that I did, is also proportional to the size of the Earth. So I think Avebury is multi-layered from a spiritual energy healing perspective. So I wouldn't disagree with about the significance of the ditch. I think that was part of it, but also there's other places in Avebury as well which are important.
Okay, well, you know, there's a lot of people suffering in their bodies and minds. You know, illness is very, very pervasive throughout our society. Now, if people want to derive benefit from visiting these ancient sacred sites, how would they get the best healing benefit from visiting these places? What would you suggest if somebody wants to receive healing from somewhere like Avebury or any?
Well, it's simply, I mean, we are surrounded by natural healing energies. Every tree has a quality of energy that you can connect to. So find an old, mature, wise tree and go and stand next to the tree and ask the tree for help, and that will help provide you with some healing energies. Going to sacred sites like Avebury, allow your intuition and inspiration to take you to a place, maybe standing next to a particular stone, and again ask for help and healing and balance. Remember actually that we, all of us, Madden, hold within us a very wise, knowing part of our being, and we tend to block this out for all sorts of reasons. Ego bits of us get in the way, and fear, shame, maybe all of those sorts of things cloud that connection to who we truly are. But if we can begin to feel a connection to this deeper part within, then that part can be a very powerful guide to where we need to go to receive help and healing. So yeah, for me, nature abounds in consciousness, spiritual energy, support, help, and so forth. But I'm also aware of key places like Avebury, which hold another level of power and healing as well.
So these seem to be these famous places like Avebury and Stonehenge, that they seem to be like node points or meridian points on the body of Mother Earth.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that the underground water is, and they do seem to be connected with underground water, these places? Would it be fair to say that the underground water is like the bloodstream of Mother Earth, and these energy lines are almost like the nervous system?
Well, it's that's in part, yes. Obviously, all of the you know, the underground water, the rivers and so forth, are all part of the consciousness of the Earth, and the Earth is supremely conscious, from my understanding. And I would also add, we always tend to think of Mother Earth and Father Sky, but that was not always the way things were perceived. I would like to think all the time that we hold a sense of a polarity balance. So it's Father, Mother Earth, Father, Mother God, etc. Because different cultures perceive these things from different gender perspectives. But ultimately, it's a balance. And we need to acknowledge and honor that balance, both within us and also outside of us.
Okay, now David, because I've entitled my podcast London Revelation, and my target audience is, well, there's
London.
Well, there's 9 million people living in Greater London, so you know the idea from my point of view, is that the more people catch on there,
Yes.
the quicker the whole concept
Okay.
of
Let me take you through to London. I'm going to do a screen share, which I hope works. So let's see.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see that, madam?
I've got a little mess. Oh yes, I have. Oh, yes. Okay. Actually, yeah, that's fantastic. Let me just I'll take a screenshot of that. All right, no, you carry on and describe it. Go on.
Right. Okay. Well, if I come out a bit, you can begin to see I've established ley line networks, picking up all sorts of different sites around. And in fact, if we want to look at Avebury, Avebury sits in here, so it's part of this twin circle pattern, which is in over the Marlborough Downs. But there's two circles there, and Avebury is just where my cursor is pointing. Okay. But if I come back to London, to focus in on London, you can begin to see some of the sites which make up London. Or one of the things, we got another major alignment which is going through here, which I call the Canterbury line, which runs from Canterbury Abbey through to Abbey Door in Herefordshire. So I think that's another equivalent of the Michael line. There's another alignment here which comes up from Chichester, goes up to Bury St Edmunds. But we've also got these triangles. So one of the significant triangles for me is this one from Boudicca's Mound, which sits up in Hampstead. So, okay. So if we focus in, you can see the mound. So on Hampstead Heath.
If people from London go up and visit Hampstead Heath to find Boudicca's Mound, is that fairly easy? Whereabouts do they head for?
The very easiest thing to do would be to look it up, Boudicca's Mound on Hampstead Heath, and then find out how to get there. Because I couldn't just describe it. I mean, the car parks which you can go to on Hampstead Heath.
Okay.
The mound itself is surrounded by a railing, so you can sit outside of it. Technically, you can't get in, but okay. It is possible to get into it.
Okay, so that's the top end of a triangle. And what's on the other two corners of the triangle there?
Well, we've got a couple of other places. One of the key sacred places in London is Greenwich.
I lived there for 10 years.
This is. You lived there, have you?
I lived in Greenwich for 10 years during the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's focused in on where Queen Elizabeth I used to have her palace, which is where the Naval College is. So somewhere in the centre here is the key place for Greenwich. And you've also got this a Greenwich line, another meridian line, which goes through, which I've just not shown here at this moment. But Greenwich is important. And also, if you go down to Wimbledon, there's a well on Wimbledon called Caesar's Well. Okay. So that's on Wimbledon Common. So there's some of the points on London. But there's another significant triangle, which is a sort of equilateral triangle, which links with Boudicca's Mound on Hampstead. It comes down to the Tower of London, and also to the West Brompton Cemetery. So there are key points on this triangular line, and you can see something of the way in which some of these patterns go. And this line goes very close to the Houses of Commons. Well, it goes to Westminster Abbey. As you can see, the line goes through Parliament, Westminster Abbey, and so it's all part of a sacred grid network that was an aspect of London. Unfortunately, just to give you another perspective, another well-known line, this was discovered by not John Michel, I forget the person.
Robin Heath?
But it starts with... No. Oh, I can't even think why his name's gone out of my mind at the moment.
Not Chris
But
Street.
it runs from, not Chris Street, no, runs from St James's Palace through to Arnold Circus. I said I spelt the word circus wrong, but there's a mound here at Arnold Circus. And looking back at the old maps of London, what you find is that a lot of places which we now have gone. For example, there was originally a big mound here called Holywell Mount that's been completely leveled. There's another mound down here, the Tothill Mound, that's completely disappeared. But this alignment is quite interesting because it picks up the central line goes through what's called the Broad Walk in Regent's Park. So if you can see, the alignment is exactly along the Broad Walk. So going into Regent's Park, Park Crescent is a significant place. You have to get special permission to go in there. Can't normally access it, but you've got this Broad Walk alignment which goes up to Boudicca's Mound.
So it's quite clear.
And this was this.
I was going to say,
this was established by John Nash.
So he
when he
had access to this information, he would have known about these energy lines.
I would think almost certainly, from a Masonic point of view, there was a knowledge and understanding of the of some of the key alignments in London, and therefore when he established this line, unless it's pure coincidence, but it's so accurately, it bisects this equilateral triangle absolutely perfectly, and the Broad Walk is a long walk. I can't quite show you the picture of it, but it's a long walk which goes through Regent's Park. Yeah.
So what intrigues me is how Westminster Abbey, the Houses of Parliament, St Paul's Cathedral, various places around London are built on key sites of this sacred geometry ground plan. So presumably those buildings themselves then must be infused with some kind of concentrated earth energy, that they must derive benefit from
yes,
buildings on those sites.
Yes, what I think happened is in the past, our ancestors were able to connect into the energy of the earth. They were also able to connect into the energy of the heavens, so star energy, if you like. And through ritual, were able to bring a sense of infusion of these two together in key places. So that's what generated the power. So it's carrying out sacred ritual by combining spiritual energy of the earth with spiritual energy of the cosmos and focalizing it in specific places. And that's what we can begin to tap into or reconnect into today.
Thank you. And what I found,
is that a simple way of?
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. Thank you, David. What I found particularly fascinating, to refer over to Chris Street's very beautiful geometric and symmetrical Earth star patterns going 20 miles across Greater London, is that all this multi-layered energy mandala, many star patterns with many alignments of churches and mounds and wells and sacred places, that it all aligns on BBC Broadcasting House. Now the BBC first broadcast from Alexandra Palace in 1936. There's a plaque up at Alexandra Palace, but yeah. What indicates to me, beyond any shadow of doubt, that the BBC knew about the Earth Star City of Revelation, these two concentric circles, 1,080 times the size of Stonehenge, is that pattern is reflected exactly in the great window at Alexandra Palace. Were you aware of that, David?
Not specifically, but what I would say, Madden, is in my perspective, what happens is people unconsciously connect into these energies.
Okay.
And very often the architects and the people who put these things together get inspired to act in specific ways. So, I mean, another way of thinking about this is there's a higher level of consciousness that overlights an area and therefore encourages people to begin to bring forward an expression of that pattern through what they create on the ground. That's another way of thinking about it, in the sense that maybe not everything was fully people were consciously aware of, except that clearly some were, like John Nash. I'm not disputing that, but that very often people were attracted to or created their houses. I mean, some of the stately homes and so forth are all on key places. And it's probably because they were inspired that this place felt right. And this was the place that felt to be appropriate to create it, like Elizabeth's Palace, the famous palace at Greenwich is a case in point.
So now this, if we look at somewhere like Washington, DC, it was built just a few hundred years ago. It's laid out on a classic inverted pentagram design. Now when a city is planned and built, I mean, it's like a replica of Rome in many ways, Washington, DC. When a city is built like that, does that design actually draw a flow of earth energies, or is it to reflect an underlying pattern? Are they building over a place where those energies already meet, or are they drawing the energy through the design?
No, I would say that once you set up the pattern, that's what starts to bring the energy in. I did quite a lot of work on the layout of Helsinki, which was established in the 1830s, about the same time as John Nash was putting in his design work in Regent's Park and all around there. But Helsinki is set out on a sacred pattern. You can see that very clearly. And it I think reflected something in the Masonic understanding which was held at that time. So certain ratios, certain proportions were considered really important, and that these were woven into the landscape.
Okay, well from my point of view, because I've been trained, by the Hare Krishnas very much in the field of mantra and the power of sound. From what we're told in our tradition is that chanting mantra, very powerful, quietly. Chanting out loud is 100 times more powerful, and chanting out loud in groups, get groups of people getting together and singing mantras is 100 times more powerful than that. So 10,000 times more powerful than quietly chanting mantras. And if that is taken to the sacred sites in London, places like, one of my favorite places in London is the 13 Tree Circle in Green Park, Primrose Hill. Is there any particular places in London, that are public accessible places that you might recommend for people to go, just where they could pick up that intensified sacred energy?
Yes, I mean, I think you've highlighted Green Park is is significant, which is all the area around St. James's Palace here. I mean, the person I was thinking of was Alfred Watkins. I can't think why his name went out of my mind, but he was the person who wrote the book The Old Straight Track.
Yes.
And he did a lot of research into ley lines back in the 1920s. So he was the one who partly inspired John Michell. John Michell took a slightly different viewpoint on Watkins' work, but Watkins was not quite the first person to spot the whole concept of alignment, because there was someone called Sir Norman Lockyer, who was the astronomer royal, who had spotted alignment around Stonehenge a little bit before Watkins' time. But Watkins did a lot of work, and interestingly enough, this alignment here, which runs from St. James's Palace. It goes through a number of churches here, like St. Clement's Danes and so forth. I haven't shown them all here up to Arnold Circus. Is on exactly the same bearing as the Michael line. So it's equivalent of, and I think this again, rather than thinking of it a Mayday sunrise, this is almost certainly established on a star-paced pattern. So it's watching star sets at particular times. It's very easy then to establish alignment patterns, across a place like London. And there was a series of mounds. Arnold Circus is a big mound. Holywell Mound is a big mound. There would have been other mounds here that would have picked up this alignment. Particularly, but I would suggest.
I was going to say Arnold Circus, Arnold's Mound. It's also at the end of a coronation line that runs through St Paul's and Westminster Abbey, goes down to the King's Stones at Kingston. That seems to be a very significant alignment. And the significance,
yes, indeed.
I happen to be doing a podcast course with Brian Rose of London Real, who set up his offices in Shoreditch. Must be very close to Arnold's Mound. So I've yet to kind of introduce this whole subject to him, because he's an American man, and he's by some extraordinary happenstance, he's now running as a candidate for Mayor of London.
So right.
I mean, I think he's an outsider, but anything can happen, and he's becoming increasingly well known and popular. I think, David, I could talk to you all day about all of these subjects, because it's endlessly fascinating to me. But we've said we'll make it half an hour today. If I may, could I possibly invite you back again? Because I think that the people listening to this podcast, so many questions will arise, that they'll want to know so many things. Could we just conclude this interview today? Could you just give a message to the people of London, your perspective, how the atmosphere could be improved by their actually tuning into and interacting with all these sacred places?
Yes. What I would suggest is to go and visit any of these key places. You can have a look at my website. I've got some of them listed there. I also talk about some of the old holy well sites of London. But to go and visit some of these key places, and just either individually or in groups, to do whatever feels right, to try to bring a feeling of harmony and balance into the landscape. London has these patterns around it. Certainly from my point of view, although I'm not all the time in London, but when I can work from a distance, and sometimes with groups, we send healing to try to balance all these energies, and particularly Parliament. I mean, Parliament needs a lot of support and help, and to try to think of all of the highest levels of creativity, consciousness, awareness, compassion coming forward from our leaders, the people who are operating through London.
It just occurred to me that John Michel wrote a book back in 1972, I believe, called City of Revelation.
Absolutely.
And then what Chris Street picked up on later was that the patterns that John Michel was describing, which are universal to many, many temple designs all over the world, Stonehenge, the Gothic cathedrals, also that design was found in the book of Revelation, which turns out to be the happy ending of the Bible, where a whole new state of consciousness descends like a bride adorned for her husband.
Absolutely.
And that seems to be it's extraordinary. People find, it's become very fashionable to dismiss religion and the Bible, but there's so much knowledge encoded into that, which John Michel brought to light. The numbers in the Bible, the famous numbers, 666 and 144,000. These relate to, my understanding, they relate to the speed of light. That light travels around the Earth at 144,000 minutes of arc per second, or 6.66 times per second, basically revealing that very, very high knowledge was being handed down in a very cryptic way by St. John, because at the time the Christians were being persecuted by the Romans. But all of those predictions from 2,000 years ago now seem to be coming to fulfillment, and we do seem to be a crux. We're crossing from
Shall I give you a little bit of information
Aquarius. Yeah, go on, you please. You
on the idea of 666?
I'll go on then, please do.
Very curious.
Okay.
If you take the first 6 numbers, numerals of the Roman alphabet or the Roman numerological system,
Yeah.
so 1 and then V and then 10, 50, 100 and then 500, and if you add those together, it comes to the number 666. So if you take D, which is 500, C, which is 100, L, which is 50, X, which is 10, V, which is 1, 5, and 1, which is 1. And if you put those together and add them up, they come to 666.
Well, of course, the Romans were worshippers of Sol Invictus, the invincible sun. And my understanding of that number, I mean, there's no such thing as an intrinsically evil number. My understanding of that number, and John Michel pointed out, when you add 666, the solar number, the male number, the emperor, to 1080, which happens to be the radius of the moon in miles, so that's the feminine. When you add those two together, you get the number of fusion, 1746. So my sense of what the Bible was conveying with the number 666 is that this was the unbalanced male, the male ego not balanced with the feminine, not balanced.
It's associated with the sun.
Yes, not balanced with Mother Earth, and that's
well, think of the sun. That's a human projection. The sun is balanced. The sun is both masculine and feminine. Right. If we choose to project onto it the masculine, that's our choice. Okay. The Japanese project onto it the feminine, which is their choice. But ultimately, it's a balance. And we need to understand those balances within us. But the number 666 is generally associated with the sun. And there's another little verse in the Bible which said that the number of talents that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. And therefore the Sol Omon is the sun and the moon. And the 666 relates to this sense of balance. Interesting, isn't it?
Oh, it's fascinating, and this is surely what's needed in our society at the moment is a restoration of balance in terms of our relationship with Mother Earth. I mean, for me, as a Hare Krishna devotee, you know, I've been a vegetarian since I was 25, and in India, you know, they hold the cow sacred. They hold the cow to be the representative of Mother Earth. So how we treat the cow is a direct index of how we treat Mother Earth. So you know, when you look at a McDonald's type culture where we're slaughtering animals on an industrial scale without the slightest thought of not only the ecological damage, you know, chopping down rainforests to graze animals, but the damage it does to our consciousness. You know, my experience of having a cleaner diet since I was 25, I'm 61 now, my experience of that is all of a sudden my mind opened up and you're just able to take in ideas that I wasn't even open to before. So, you know, I'm not one to badger people about their diets, but you must know surely from your healing experience that a healthy diet is good for the mind and good for our relationship with the earth as well.
I would agree. I don't have no problems about any of that, Madam.
Okay.
Yes, we need to love the earth. We need to be aware of the earth. We need to recognize the earth is supremely conscious and learn to communicate with the different things.
And, you know, it's become very fashionable to dismiss the existence of God, but I presume you believe in God in one form or another.
I believe in a creative intelligence behind the universe. Absolutely.
I mean, this is why I chose the subject of sacred geometry, because I just feel, you know, with our education systems that pretty much deny or almost ridicule God, you know, in the name of science, that with sacred geometry, you've got a very tangible way of establishing an underlying design in the universe. You know, like the relative proportions of the Earth, Moon, and Sun, these can all be described as defined in whole numbers, and like the orbit of Venus forming a five-pointed star, and so there's so many astounding geometrical, mathematical, tangible ways of establishing design far beyond mere human projection. It's just there, basically, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Even in every water molecule, every water molecule is in an individual perfect hexagram. I mean, just extraordinary. On that note, David, because I don't, although I could happily talk to you all day, we'll wind it up there. And I just want to say, David Furlong, thank you very much indeed for giving me your time today. I will look out for your book, Keys to the Temple, and just give us the reference. Where do we find your website?
It's www.davidfurlong.co.uk. So if you just Google David Furlong, you will almost certainly come through to me somewhere along the line.
And your currently available books. You've written 6 books. So what are the ones that are currently in print?
The Illuminating the Shadow. I've got a book on they're all available. Develop Your Intuition and Psychic Power, Healing Your Ancestral Patterns, The Healer Within.
And there's one of your books, because I've got these sheets in front of me of your London alignments. There's one of your books, for the London listeners, does one of your books cover that, or is that?
It's probably best to get that off my website.
Okay. So all you London listeners out there, you can download some amazing alignments, maps of London from David Furlong's website, davidfurlong.co.uk.
Yeah.
Fabulous. All right, David, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, well,
look forward to talking to you again. Okay. Thank you.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye for now.